to AZ Academy USA. Today I'll be reading Plant Life Cycles. If you guess that the photo shows an insect covered in pollen, you are right. The insect on page 6 is called a hawkmoth. It uses its curly straw-like tongue to sip nectar from flowers. Tiny yellow grains of pollen stick to the insect's body as it feeds. Why is the moth there? The plant's colorful flowers and sweet nectar attract the moth. The plant benefits when such visitors carry its pollen away. Some plants spread pollen as part of their life cycles. This is the process by which organisms grow and reproduce over their lives. There are many different types of flowers, from fuzzy mouses to towering trees. Some flower, others do not, yet all of them have something in common. They use sunlight to make their own food. In this book, you will learn how plants do this and how they spread and thrive. Starting small. In a forest near Northern California, a team of scientists wake up early. They strap on helmets and climbing harnesses and fasten themselves to ropes. Then they start climbing the trunks of giant sequoia trees. These plants are some of the tallest trees in the world. Giant sequoias can grow nearly 300 feet, 91 meters high. That's as tall as a 30-story building. But the sequoias begin their lives like most plants do, like tiny seeds. Spores and seeds. Plants such as mosses, ferns, and horsetails can get their start as spores. A spore is just one cell surrounded by a protective outer coat. Most spores are so small you need a microscope to see them. All other plants begin as seeds. Seeds are bigger than spores, but they are much smaller than the plants they grow into. The seeds of a giant sequoia tree is no larger than a grain of oatmeal. Inside a seed contains the ingredients that a new plant needs to start growing. In the middle of the seed is the baby plant, called the embryo. It's surrounded by the endosperm. This is a scratchy material that provides food for the embryo. A tough seed coat surrounds the embryo and the endosperm. It protects the new plant until it is ready to germinate or sprout. What seeds need? A seed's coat seals in moisture. This keeps the embryo alive in dormant or resting state. Some seeds stay dormant for only a few days before sprouting. Others can sprout after thousands of years. A seed needs 3 things to start growing: warmth, moisture, and oxygen. A seed planted in winter stays dormant until temperatures rise in spring. Over time, cracks form in the seed coats. This lets in water and oxygen-rich air. Breaking out. As water seeps in, the seed swells. It bursts through whatever is left of the seed coat. The root, which grows downward out of the seed, is the first part of the plant to start growing. It anchors the seedling and begins soaking up water and nutrients from the soil. After that, a shoot grows upwards. It unfurls to relieve 1 or 2 tiny leaves, the first of many plants will make. animals, plants grow their whole lives. That's true whether they live for a few months or hundreds of years. One bristlecone pine tree in California is more than 500,000 years old, and it has been growing slowly the whole time. Growing continuously takes a lot of energy. Animals gather energy by eating, which is most plants cannot do. Instead, plants are built to collect the energy they need from the sun. Food factories. Plant leaves are growing because they contain a great pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll's color allows it to absorb energy from sunlight and transfer it into the plant. Plant cells use this energy to power a chemical process that makes food for the plant. It creates oxygen for the atmosphere and food for other organisms as well. This process is called photosynthesis, a combination of Greek words that mean building from light. Sunlight isn't the only ingredient in photosynthesis. Plants also need water and nutrients from the ground and carbon dioxide from the air. During photosynthesis, plant cells break down the water and carbon dioxide. They use the components to make oxygen and sugars. The oxygen is released back into the air. The sugars are combined into more complex substances, which are used to build every part of the growing plant. Transport system. Plants need to circulate water and nutrients throughout their entire bodies as they grow. Many plants form a network of tubes to do this. One set of tubes carries water from the plant's roots up to its leaves and its branches. Another set carries sugars from the leaves to the rest of the plant. This system allows the vascular plants to grow taller than non-vascular plants, such as mosses, which must stay close to the damp ground. Becoming plant parents. Once they have matured, plants can reproduce. To do this, they must pass on copies of their DNA. DNA contains the instructions for making an organism. Every living cell has a copy of the organism's DNA inside. All plants have two ways of reproducing, sexually and asexually. Sexual production is when two organisms combine their DNA into one cell that grows into a new individual. In asexual reproduction, an organism copies its own DNA. Making spores. Mosses, horsetails, and ferns are seedless plants. One way they reproduce is with spores. For example, some of the leaves on a fern reproduce clusters of tiny brown spore capsules. Inside each capsule, cells divide asexually to form hundreds of individual spores. When the capsules dry out, they burst open and a million of spores emerge. The spores drift on the wind or in water to find a new place to grow. If a spore finds a suitable landing spot, it starts to develop. It grows into a form of the plant that reproduces sexually. In ferns, this form is called prothallus. It is less than 0.3 inches, 8 millimeters across, no longer than a grain of rice. It is shaped like a tiny heart and lies flat on the ground. It produces male sperm and female egg cells that combine, and the DNA inside these cells combine as well. This makes a new baby fern. Pollen reproduction. Conifers such as pines and hemlock trees sexually reproduce using structures called cones. Conifers have both male and female cones. Usually, both are found on the same tree. In spring, male cones reproduce millions of tiny pollen grains. Each one contains a copy of half of the tree's DNA. As the cones dry out, they release the pollen into the wind. In full bloom, most plants in the world make flowers for sexual reproduction. Many flowers contain both male and female parts. The male parts, called stamens, make pollen. To spread it, the flowers attract animals such as bees, mouse, and bats, and hummingbirds. Bright colors tell a bee that the flower has nectar inside it. When it lands on the flower to feed, pollen sticks to its body. When the bee moves to a new flower, it carries the pollen along. A seed forms. When a pollen grain lands on a female part of a flower called the pistil, it joins the oval inside. Inside the oval are two special cells, an egg and a similar egg-like cell. The pollen fertilizes these two special cells. The fertilized egg goes on to make an umbrella for the new plant. The other egg-like cell becomes a seed around the embryo. The big truth. Other ways to grow. Plants do not always need flowers, cones, or sprouts to reproduce. Many plants can also reproduce asexually with a method called vegetative reproduction. Here are a few examples of how that happens. Rhizomes. Rhizomes are stems that grow horizontally underground. New roots and shoots grow from them. Plants that use this method: bamboo, ginger. Tubers and taproots. Tubers are swollen stem parts. Taproots are swollen root parts. Both store a plant's nutrients and can reproduce new plants. Plants that use this method: potatoes, parsnips, and more. Other plants, such as spider plants, can reproduce new roots and leaves from the leaf edges. Mosses and liverworts can grow new plants from pieces that have been separated from the original plant. A new home. Have you ever blown the seeds of a dandelion? If so, you were helping its life cycle along. Seeds and spores need to travel away from your parent plant so they don't compete with one another for light, water, and nutrients. Blowing on the wind is one way they can disperse. Dandelion seeds are shaped like tiny umbrellas, which helps them float farther. They can drift more than 325 feet, 100 miles away. Catching a wave. Seeds and spores also can travel by water. The coconut palm, which grows naturally on beaches, drops its seed directly into the sea. Coconuts can drift for many miles in the ocean while the seeds stay dormant. Air pockets inside a coconut help it float. The seed garments once it washes up on a new beach. Scientists think that the floating helped coconuts spread to tropical shores around the world over 1,000 years. Hitching a ride. Some plants count on animals to spread their seeds for them. A plant called burdock, for instance, grows seeds covered in tiny Velcro-like hooks. When a furry animal brushes past the burdock, the spiky burrs catch in its fur. Later, when the animal finally wraps the burrs off, the seeds fall to the ground and grow in a new place. Eat me. Other seeds also travel with animals, not on the outside of their bodies, but inside. Many flowering plants surround their seeds with fleshy fruit or sweet berries. This attracts animals to eat the fruit, along with the seeds inside. An animal digests the fruit. The seeds start to break open. Eventually, the seeds come out in the animal's droppings. The droppings give seeds an extra boost of nutrients as they start to grow. Exploding away. A few plants grow seed pods that explode and fling seeds away from the plant. Witch hazel plants, for example, produce woolly capsules with 2 seeds inside. The seeds take a full year to mature. When the capsules dry out the next autumn, they burst open with a loud pop. This launches the seed up to 20 feet away. Life after death. Some plants, such as sunflowers, live for less than a year. They germinate in the spring, bloom in the summer, and die after scattering seeds in fall. Trees can live for decades and even centuries and reproduce many times. And a dead plant can still help other plants and animals. As soon as it dies, it starts to decompose or break down. Mold and other tiny organisms kick off the decomposing process by eating nutrients from the dead plant. Next, small animals such as millipedes and earthworms gradually break the plant down into soil. A large tree can take many years to rot completely, dropping limbs over a long period of time. The rotting wood provides a warm, wet home where new seedlings can sprout. Some of them may be descendants of the dead plant, growing from seeds that fell close to the tree. A plant timeline. 1 billion years ago, green algae starts using photosynthesis and releasing oxygen in the air. 470 million years away. MYA. The first moss-like plants with a simple life cycle move onto the land. 425 MYA. Plants evolve vascular systems and to grow taller. 300 MYA. The first seeds reproducing plants start to grow. 200 MYA. Plants starting evolving flowers to help them reproduce. Today, there are about 400,000 known species of plants. Branching out. When plants reproduce sexually, the new plants have different DNA from each of their parents. That means they can have slightly different traits than their parents' plants did. Over many generations, this helps plants develop new forms and survival strategies. As a result, they can adjust to different climates and habits. Over millions of years, small changes add up to big ones. They can lead to entirely new types of plants with their own ways to live and grow. Did you like this book? I hope you did. Please like and subscribe to my channel.